Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines and our subscribers. We're recording on Monday, April 20th, 2026. I am your host, Jeremiah O'Shan. Today, I'm again joined by Aaron Campo and our engineer, Lickett. The Sounders finally played a league home game, their first in nearly 2 months, and they turned in an appropriately impressive performance. The 4-1 win over St. Louis City extended their home unbeaten streak to a club record 19 matches across all competitions, which actually stretches back to last year's Club World Cup. Christian Roldan got a couple of goals, Albert Rusnak had 2 assists and a goal, and Osaze de Rosario got his first of the season. The Sounders are now 5-1-1 in regular season play this year, their second best ever start. Even though they've now been eliminated from CONCACAF Champions Cup, things seem to be going pretty good, Aaron. Also, I'm glad to be back. I was out last week, but Aaron, how's it? What do you think? What do you think? This is a good start, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of a start where I felt better about the team. I'm sure that we've had better starts statistically, and we've had a lot of good teams. So I'm sure I felt great about, say, the 2014 team or what have you. But I feel really, really good about this team. I think not only because they're playing so well, but because of the circumstances in which they played this well. A lot of road games, as we've talked about, obviously. They've had some fixtures congestion with Champions Cup. I thought they played really well against Tigres in a losing effort. I think that, if they play that game again 9 times out of 10, they get through at least a handful of times. And then, I was feeling pretty good after the game on Saturday, and I heard some people saying, well, St. Louis is not a very good team, and they're not, but the Sounders beat them 4-1 with a heavily rotated lineup. And that's the thing. You beat the teams you play, right? And they did. And, they ground out results on the road, and they are beating teams into a fine mist at home. And that's the recipe for a successful season. The thing that's crazy, and I'm sure this will shake out to some degree over the course of the season, but the Western Conference is so stacked that this could potentially be the best team they've ever had, and they could finish like 3rd or 4th in the Western Conference because San Jose looks legit, Vancouver looks legit. There are other teams in the West that look perfectly respectable. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season, but I do feel really, really good about where this team is at right now.
Yeah, the only start that was better than this one was 2021 when they were 5-0-2. So they just had one more point through 7 games. And of course, that was also the season where they started on a 13-game 13-game unbeaten streak. So a long way to go to get to there. But in some ways, I don't know. I felt like that season didn't feel quite as like they've made more statements, I feel like, in this season. And a lot of that is because of Champions Cup. Of their you would add in the 3 wins that they've had in Champions Cup. They beat Tigres at home. They beat Vancouver Whitecaps twice. Whitecaps are looking like the best team in the league right now. They're the only team to have beaten San Jose. They did that on the road. Minnesota, that was a team that actually now looks pretty good. They tied them on the road. They beat the Rapids 2-0. That's a team that also looks very good. The only loss that they have in the regular season is to RSL. And at the time, we were kind of down on that result. But in hindsight, RSL is a very good team. That I don't know that a 2-1 loss to RSL is really anything to be upset about. It extended this annoying streak that we have against them, but the Sounders have played well against good teams this year, and I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic because of more so who they've beaten than how they've beaten them. But like you said, you beat St. Louis City 4-1. St. Louis had been playing much better. They had been 4 unbeaten coming into this game across all competitions. Their last loss was a 2-0 loss to LAFC, where they actually looked pretty good against LAFC in that loss. So, I don't know that, St. Louis is not a great team, but they aren't as bad as they looked against the Sounders.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, I think the game we played in St. Louis is evidence of that, right? Like they didn't look as nearly as bad. They've looked more solid in other games. I think they're a bad matchup for the Sounders. And I think that once the Sounders found second gear, it was pretty clear how much better they were. But it's not like they beat Sporting Kansas City 4-1 at home.
Right.
They beat a St. Louis team 4-1 at home that is respectable, maybe like a playoff bubble team. And it wasn't close. I mean, there was some consternation after the first 15 minutes that they started pretty slowly. St. Louis looked like they had the better of the play, but I think that's pretty normal for a game where there's as much rotation as there was in this one, where some guys who hadn't played as much, who some of whom were playing out of like what you would maybe consider to be their most natural position. Just a lot of rotation after I think a tough result midweek in a game that I think probably took a lot out of the team emotionally. Starting flat is maybe not super surprising, but once they were able to grab a hold of the game, they didn't let go of it. And, that's what you can't be 100% fully on 90 minutes every game. What you manage to do with those games is really I think the differentiator between really great teams and good teams and mediocre teams, right? Because we've had plenty of Sounders teams who were very talented and capable of playing as well as anybody else in the league, who let games like this one get away from them, who weren't able to grind out the results on the road, who turned wins on the road into draws on the road into losses, dropped results at home on the days they weren't at 100%. And I think that this Sounders team so far, I mean, it's very early in the season still, but so far has shown the ability to not let that happen and to find the gear they need to find to get the result more often than not.
Yeah, they made 5 changes for what it's worth from the Tigres game. You can kind of throw Thomas out the window, but Jackson Reagan wasn't even on the bench. We were told that's purely rotational, but that's a big piece to be missing, especially when you're already really shorthanded at center back.
Yeah.
So Tino Lopez was the only natural center back who started, and this is a guy who wasn't even on the roster at the beginning of the season. And then Paul Areola replaced Paul Rothrock. Hassani Dodson came in for Schneider Brunel. And then I guess you could say, then Brunel sort of replaced Ferreira and Musovski replaced Morris. I mean, it's not a bad team that they started, but I think that also shows their depth. I mean, this is a team that can make 5 changes and it not be a huge drop off in quality. Kalani Kosarienzi had another stellar game, and he's your backup right back. And you can kind of just go down that list. Snyder Brunel gets sort of played out of position, and he doesn't seem out of place at all. It was actually his shot that set up the first corner. And again, you can just sort of go down this list of everyone that are getting these starts. Tino Lopez, like I said, wasn't even on the roster at the beginning of the season, and he's turning in solid performance after solid performance. I mean, it's very, very impressive. Andrew Thomas looks like he might be in running for goalkeeper of the year in his first year as a starter. There's a lot to like about this team right now. And, in some ways it's a bummer that they didn't get the shutout. As it was, they ran their shutout streak to 495 minutes, which I am pretty sure is a club record in the regular season, which is another cool little thing. And what's amazing about this start to me is that it doesn't really feel like they have reached they're not playing great. They're playing well. I think the Tigres win was probably their best performance of the season. But even in the two legs against Vancouver, I think you could find flaws in both of those performances. The St. Louis game was their most resounding victory, but I don't know that it certainly wasn't a perfect performance. And I think it's a good sign that they're getting these results without necessarily looking like the team that was, lighting everyone up during Leagues Cup last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Tigres results is a great example of that, where that's them at their very best, right? Getting 3 goals against a Tigres team who had no interest in having any of the ball, especially after they scored. And that's what the Sounders can do to an excellent team like Tigres, who, I mean, excellent maybe is a stretch, but a very good team. They would be a very good MLS team, right? But yeah, I mean, against St. Louis, like we said earlier, like for the first 15 minutes, they were clearly the second best side. They got pretty lucky, I think, I don't want to say it was lucky because the execution was great. The ability of Rusnak to spot how wide open Christian was and find him on the first one and then repeat that again on the second one. But those are mistakes that better teams probably aren't going to make, right? So, but they found their way into the game. And once they had a foothold, they were able to take control of it, and that's the important thing. But I do think as Jordan Morris gets more comfortable, being back at full strength now, I mean, he seems like he's pretty much fully back. It doesn't really seem like they're managing his minutes too much anymore. As I think Albert, is starting to look much more like himself. He's obviously got an injury he's dealing with. That's probably he's going to be dealing with for, the rest of the season, most likely. But he looks very much like himself. I think that his struggles earlier in the year were somewhat overstated. I mean, he was still statistically one of the better attacking players the Sounders had. But he clearly was not as sharp as usual. That's starting to improve. Jesus continues to look great as a creator, but is also starting to look a lot more goal dangerous, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So yeah,
5 shots in the last 2 games, which is more than he had all season.
Yeah. I mean, I think at one point he had like single digit percentage point XG for the year, so he's looked much more goal dangerous the last few games, which makes sense because they're playing at home, right? So that certainly helps things. But I think this team can be better and will probably need to be better in plenty of games this seasons. And these are good games to sort of find yourself, right? Like now that they've got some more home games against some weaker teams, that's a nice time to remember who you are and who you can be as an attacking team. And they certainly have shown that over the last couple of games. I love how much more dangerous on set pieces they look this year. I love how much less dangerous the opposition looks on set pieces this year. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this team can do once they sort of get back into the groove and the season sort of normalizes a little bit after the front-loaded road schedule.
Yeah, you're talking about Albert Rusnak and sort of his slow start. He's now at 0.45 goals per 90 across all competitions. That's basically his career average. His that's basically what he's did the last 2 years. And you add in the assists, he's very much on pace for a very normal season for him.
Right.
And that's what people get all wrapped up in sort of like the stats early on in the season. And it's like, yeah, but 1 or 2 good games could totally change that. And here we are. Yeah. He's right back to where we would have expected. But I mean, I think I'm choosing to take it as a positive that, like a bunch of stuff has come out recently that has been showing how the Sounders are probably overperforming a little bit their underlying numbers in terms of their what you would expect them to be getting points wise and what they're actually getting. And I'm taking that as a positive in part because the name of the game, frankly, is to overperform your underlying numbers on the road. If you can do that, you're going to have a good season.
Right.
And that's usually what ends up being the difference between the good teams or the best teams in the league and the mediocre ones is the ones that are catching a few breaks on the road, who are finding ways to win extra points when a tie is probably the fairer result, they're finding a win. And when a loss is the fairer result, they're finding a way to tie. And the Sounders, through their first 5 road games, that's exactly what they are doing. And then at home, they're taking care of business.
Yeah.
And, and if you're the Sounders by the metrics should have won both of their home games. And if you can do that, if you can put yourself into a position to win your home games and to get more points than you should be on the road, that's how you put together a Shield contending season. And, it's too early to get caught up in the Shield, but I do think it's worth noting that the Sounders now, going back to the Club World Cup last year, are 22-5-9. That's a 36 game sample size that includes 17 road games. And they're getting over those 36 games. They're averaging 2.08 points per game, and they're scoring two goals per game. Over the course of a whole season, that's a 71 point season and a 74 goal season. Sign me up for that every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it is too early to be talking seriously about the Shield, but I mean, the last few years, it hasn't been too early to say, well, they're probably not winning the Shield this year, right? Like I feel like 2021 was the last time.
It was the last time that was the last time they have to start like this. Yeah.
And so that's that's great. That's a big improvement. And I think because that's been the thing the last few years, like last year, even though the attack was better, even though they were more fun to watch, it was a slow start and they didn't really turn it back on until after Leagues Cup. And the 2 things people have been really asking for the last few years is we want more attacking soccer. We want more goals, even if it means giving up something defensively. We saw that last year. They gave up a little too much defensively a little earlier in the season, and that cost them.
Yeah.
This year, they've maintained, at least at home, where you would expect to see the bulk of the scoring, they've maintained that style of play without having a defensive regression from where they were towards the end of the year. And so that's really important. And I think in terms of the overperformance, right, we're still in the very small sample XG part of the season. And so I don't really think there's any sense in reading too much into that at this point, because I think ultimately that San Jose game probably accounts for the majority of the overperformance.
Yeah. I mean, that's a game where the underlying data says you should have lost and you figure out how to win. That's
and I'm just not going to apologize for having a game like that. Every team's going to have a couple games like that a year where they should win. The Sounders will probably have games where they should win that they lose. And that's just the way it goes. But I think this is a clearly a very good team. The thing, it's not to come back to this again, but the thing that's crazy is I don't know how good they are in comparison to Vancouver and San Jose yet. Right. I just don't know. There's part of me that doesn't expect,
even though
San
they're
Jose
3-0 against those teams. Notably.
Sure. No, it's true. It's true. I mean, but when I watch those teams play,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
They seem really, really, really good, and in a way that, like, I haven't seen the Sounders reach the heights that I've seen San Jose and Vancouver reach this year.
I would agree with that.
But by the same token, they haven't fallen apart in the way those teams have at times this year, right? Like the Sounders haven't had a game as bad as the one, like San Jose blew that game in San Jose, right?
Right.
Vancouver blew that game up in Vancouver in the Champions Cup, and the Sounders have not done that. And I mean, that is ultimately the it's kind of like we talked about earlier with past Sounders teams that maybe were at their very best better than this team. They threw games away. Maybe that's where the Sounders have the edge over those teams who, can run with anybody, but also are prone to, giving one away every now and again.
Yeah, and I watched Brian Schmetzer's post-game speech that he gave to the players, and in his signature style, it's not fiery and it's not It's not over the top, but he does a really good job of sort of illustrating what it is that they do differently. And it's just sort of this sense of camaraderie, this sense of belief that even if we are rotating five guys, we still are, our expectation is that we should win and we should probably win handily. And I do think there's a secret sauce here that I don't think is always getting properly appreciated, especially by the outside media, that, Brian really has created something special with the Sounders. And it seems trite and it seems cliche, but he does really deserve credit for putting something together that's really quite special right now. I don't know how long it will last. I'm not really allowing myself to get too caught up in that. But the team as constructed right now, I think, is a contender. Yeah. And I don't have any obvious nits to pick with the roster. Like you can certainly find ways to spend money if you want, but I don't know that a player from outside the organization would be doing a better job than Tino Lopez. I don't know that, anyone from outside the organization would be doing better than Snyder Burnell. You can kind of like the players they've signed relatively recently. Peter Kingston came off the bench in this game. They dropped Christian Roldan back to center back. Peter Kingston did not look remotely out of place.
No.
Very confident, had a little bit of sauce. And this is a guy who, by all rights, should probably be out of professional soccer. Like a couple years ago, he was seriously contemplating leaving professional soccer, and he stuck around and he won himself a contract this year, and he looks great doing it. This is a team that still is missing Pedro de la Vega, that hasn't gotten a fully functional Jordan Morris yet, that Yamar has missed a lot of games, and these guys are going to come back, and they're probably going to be able to return to something like their full form. I'm optimistic about this season, even with all, there's legitimate complaints about the way that this ownership is spending money on the team, but God damn it, they also are getting a lot out of the players they have.
I had a lot more time for the complaints this time last season, when it was another slow start, when the offense hadn't really picked it up yet, when they had clear holes on the roster. I don't care at this point. Like, tell me where they can and should upgrade right now. Tell me where they have a spot, a roster spot where they can go out and spend a transfer fee and bring somebody in from outside of the league. Yes, they could sign a U22. I mean, I'm just extremely skeptical that the U22 is worth the money. Like, I got to take Adrian's side on this one, man. Like, look at the play, look at the players you just read off that they have had come in and step in that have done better than all the other U22s in the league.
I know,
but most of the other U22s.
But a lot of them, yeah. I mean, like if Snyder Burnell, the joke was made if it was spelled Sneijdder and he was coming from Holland, no, everyone would think this is like the smartest move the Sounders have ever made. And you can kind of, if Osaze De Rosario had been signed straight from the Ukrainian Premier League, people would be like, that's what I'm talking about.
And that's not to say that, like, I don't want them to spend more money. I certainly I do. When they have the opportunity to spend money, I want to see them do it. But I just am completely unconvinced that there's a reason to do it right now, that they have an opportunity to do it right now in a way that is truly meaningful. Especially they have this huge supply of GAM. They could upgrade players from within the league who are just going to be inherently less risky than going and signing they're going to be able to fit under the salary cap. And people are going to get pissed off if they do that at midseason. And it's going to be frustrating to see. And like, if you want to say, if Pedro de la Vega can't get healthy this year and he can't make an impact, and you want to have a conversation in the offseason about whether or not they should, sell him at a loss or potentially even buy him out and go sign somebody else, I think we can have that conversation at that point, right? I think that's totally reasonable. But right now, today, all the DP spots are spoken for. They're stacked at all the positions that I would really consider to be important. I just don't know what you want them to do other than spend, like, not to use the line that everybody hates to hear, but like other than spending money for the sake of it. I'm really not sure what it is you want them to be spending money on at this point.
I'll tell you, the one move that I have heard people suggest as a possibility, and it's technically not possible right now, but if for some reason Hugo Kuipers becomes available, because Chicago goes out and signs Robert Lewandowski or something like that,
yeah,
I would hope that they would figure out how to make that possible. If that means extending Jordan or whatever, it has to happen. But that's like an example of the kind of move you might be able to theoretically make within the league. And, that would be pretty exciting. And I'm certainly not against making internal signings from within MLS. And I do think that this front office deserves some benefit of the doubt too. At least as far as the talent evaluators and, that part of it. I think they've done really good work. They've created an environment where, players are succeeding. And it's even wilder to consider that the guys they got rid of, Georgie Manungu, Reed Baker Whiting, Obed Vargas, all are doing well. Like they are, in their own way, they are all getting opportunities and making the most of them. Reed Baker Whiting started at Azteca for Nashville in a historic win for Nashville. Georgie Manungu looked very good against Miami over the weekend. These are good players who would presumably raise the baseline for the Sounders, but I don't know if they would be playing a lot because right now there are, I don't know that Reed Baker Whiting would be beating out Nuhu. I don't know that Georgie Manungu would be taking minutes away from Areola and Rothrock and whoever else. So it's I don't know. It's funny because on one hand, it's like I do want to see the Sounders spending some money, and I'm frustrated that there doesn't seem to be a lot of money to spend. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know, where are you going to spend it?
Right. I think that you can absolutely simultaneously hold the position that the Sounders should spend more money in a general sense. They should be more willing to take big swings when they have the opportunity to spend money. They should be willing to do it, right? And that right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to do that because there's just not an obvious spot where you can upgrade given the realities of the roster. Like you said, if they can get Jordan to sign an extension and they can bring somebody else in as a DP, then maybe that makes sense to do, especially if it's somebody like Kuipers who knows the league well. You have a pretty good sense is going to be a good fit, is not going to be a bust. Maybe that makes sense, but who knows if Jordan's even wants to do that,
right?
So yeah. And who knows if the Sounders want to do something like that with some of the unknowns about the roster designations and what all that's going to look like in 2 years. I'm almost tired of talking about it because
I know
the team is so good.
It seems like something we could.
There's so much fun to watch.
No, that's fair. We should be talking about how well they are playing right now.
But
and
it's impossible. It's impossible to ignore the fact that it's still a constant topic of conversation.
It is. Yeah, it is. Anyone else from this game though that stand out to you? I thought in some ways it was a big step forward for Snyder. I thought it was, Tino Lopez again was very good. It may have been Kalani low key, one of Kalani's best games.
Yeah.
He just did not really put a foot wrong.
I think Tino playing as well as he did without Jackson Reagan next to him is really impressive to me, because that's kind of been the thing, right? Is like, as good as he's been, he's had arguably the best center back in the league next to him. And he's been able to just sort of concentrate. And Alex is a very good center back in his own right, but he's not Jackson Reagan, right? And so I thought that was a really impressive performance. He's really the guy that I was most excited about coming out of that one.
I have to share kind of a funny anecdote from the locker room. So speaking of Alex Roldan, so Christian Roldan was talking to us and he was being asked about playing center back. And he's like, yeah, I know it's a tough position to play, and we needed help back there. Blah blah blah. And he's like, Alex has done really good. And then you can kind of see him look over his shoulder, and something's going on there, and he's continues to praise Alex. And then I turn around and I see Alex, and he's just like making these big gestures of like, oh, thank you so much for shouting me out. And it was just these big gestures, and it was like kind of, I'm sure it was him giving his brother a hard time for sharing the spotlight. But Alex does deserve a lot of praise for his season. It's just amazing. You look at his growth curve, and this is a player, again, another player who was close to being out of the team, maybe out of professional soccer, and just sort of like worked his way back in. And, he's one of the best right backs in the league, I think I'm comfortable saying. But more than that, he's just one of the better defenders in the league. He can play a variety of positions. He's made the transition to center back look way too easy. Way too easy. We have seen a lot of players struggle with that transition, and he has made it look like it's not even an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the side conversations today in the Discord was about Brad Evans making that transition, and how I think eventually was quite a good center back, but struggled so much early on.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's been none of that with Alex. Hopefully we're not jinxing him, but he's played there, a decent amount.
At this point, I don't know. He's been there enough now where it's like he can have normal struggles, but he's
right. I'm unconvinced that converting him to center back is full time is a great idea for a host of reasons, but having that as an option is really just a luxury. It's so nice to have somebody who not only Alex can go and play that position effectively, but you also have a right back who he's not at Alex's level, but I'm sure a lot of teams would love to have Kalani as their starting right back, just to have that luxury. And as you said, it's a luxury that the Sounders always seem to find themselves having, right? They've always got somebody who you feel comfortable can step in and do a job at pretty much every position on the field. And it doesn't seem like a coincidence at this point.
Yeah, it does not. It really does not seem like a coincidence at all. They're just churning it out. Tino Lopez right now, I think, is something like the second best rated player on Football. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Andrew Thomas is the top rated goalkeeper, I think, on there. It's nuts, man.
It is nuts. I don't know. This is it's a fun team to watch right now, and hopefully people are getting into it. It was a decent crowd on Saturday, but not a huge crowd. I don't think they're selling the. For some reason they don't seem to be selling the Hawk's Nest yet. I assume that's a rate. Like there's something to do with how much of it can be opened or something. I don't know. But it is, I would like to think people are going to be coming out to games soon. Like it's a fun, I don't know. It's a fun, there's a good things going on at Lumen right now, I guess is what I'm saying. Despite all the silliness that's going on around elsewhere. But all right, well, I think we should probably take a break. We have a big announcement, or a notable announcement to make. I'm going to be sharing the interview I did with David Gass over at Soccerwise. Sounder at Heart is teaming up with Kickback Media to be doing some partnerships. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you're going to see a little bit more stuff from Soccerwise and Kickback Media in our channels, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then Aaron and I will close it out and get back to you. All right, you're listening to Nos Audiatis. Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right, in the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newber. Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Audietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Well, hello, everybody. Special segment here for us. David Gass and Jeremiah Ocean, someone you know very well, has already been on Soccerwise with me. He is the editor of Sounder at Heart. We've both been in the content minds of the soccer world for a long time, and we are very excited to announce that we are going to have a partnership going forward between Kickback Media and Sounder at Heart. Sounder at Heart, one of the biggest local coverage platforms in the soccer space in North America, doing an incredible job covering the Sounders, the Reign, everything else below that and in between. Not Ballard FC, because Ballard lost to Vermont Green in the final, but everything else alongside it. And Jeremiah, I'm very excited for this partnership. We've been talking for a while about doing something like this, and I am very excited to sort of have our first steps as we get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think this is really cool to have two sort of independent outlets coming together. You know, we've been trying to partner with various other independent outlets just to come up with different ways that we can drive audience and hopefully some money. So this felt very natural to me.
And I think for us, you know, sort of what we have talked about is Sounder at Heart is your source for anything Seattle, Washington, Cascadia, all of that soccer that you want. And then we have Soccerwise specifically up into our First Touch shows in Kickback, which can give you sort of a national vibe or an international vibe as we get into some big soccer that's going to be coming to North America. So we're going to be doing some crossovers on the audio side, social side, written side as well over the next few months. And as you said, this is something we've all thought about for a while, and Sounder at Heart has done some incredible work, and we are in an interesting spot. And I think we wanted to talk a little bit about where media sort of sits around the game in North America, because you had the experience of the SB Nations going away and finding your feet on your own and building what you guys have built. And then obviously for me, building up Soccerwise and it becoming Kickback Media and where we are very passionate about the idea that the fans in this region deserve high quality coverage and consistent coverage, but it is not so easy to come by.
It isn't, and it is sort of depending on your perspective, the state of soccer media right now. Like we were just talking before we started, and in some ways it feels like really bad and dark, and like you see outlets closing and doing all these other things. But on the other hand, you do have all these independent outlets like ourselves, like you guys, who are doing real journalism and aren't part of a team apparatus Like Sounder at Heart doesn't take, despite what people seem to think, Sounder at Heart does not take money from the Sounders. And it is worse in ways, but it is also like there's this opportunity, and I do think it's better. And I think this is sort of an example of something that just wasn't possible a few years ago, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting take on it, because the other side for me, and I think back to when the SB Nation sort of issues occurred, which I think was early 2023, which you were coming out of a season in which you had 28 unique local broadcasts in Major League Soccer, which had sideline reporters and hosts and analysts and people that lived in market and went to training and thought about and talked about teams as a job. Mm-hmm. And you had an SB Nation blog across all those 28 teams that was covering those teams and was an opportunity and a platform for people who wanted to get into things. Newsrooms as well. I mean, Washington Post and Steve Goff, like that was something we thought would never end, and we hoped it wouldn't. And so it just felt like, I think a few years ago, there was more of a environment, and it was more spread out, and there was more varied coverage and more options. But in saying all of that, as you say, having team broadcast is not the perfect way to cover a team, because they are connected to the team and there are things that they're not going to cover, which I think now, as you have independent sources, you have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think you have more real news being broken in some ways. I mean, like The Guardian is another example of an outlet who wasn't really covering MLS even a year ago, and now they have a really robust North American whole coverage that, that's not just MLS, it's the U.S. national team, it's NWSL, so I do think you have, and that's real, like, I don't want to be too too weird about it, but that's like real journalism. They're actually calling people, they're writing stuff that is not with the expectation of it being from a fan perspective. And I do think that fan perspectives are super important. Sounder at Heart leans into that really heavily, but I do think that there's value in that. The Athletic is still doing good MLS coverage. But you're right, on a granular team by team level, there just is not as much of it as there used to be. I know as well as anyone that SB Nation wasn't exactly paying full-time wages to anybody covering MLS, but they were providing an opportunity, and they created a framework, and they had a platform, and you could still do those things independently, but it is harder.
Yep.
And it creates some barriers. And, so I'm not trying to be Pollyanna-ish about it and say that things are better than they've ever been, but I just think that sometimes we forget how bad they used to be. They could be really bad. Like there was times, when we both got into this 2009, 2010, 2011, there were virtually no full-time jobs covering MLS at any level for anybody.
100%. Yeah.
And so the fact that there are now some is, in some ways an improvement.
Yeah. I mean, I was never full-time working in the contract way I did at MLS, and it was always cobbling together 5 things and doing college basketball games and working as a security guard at a museum and then watching games in between. Yeah. And I think we've all had that experience. And that probably never goes away, because part of all of this is some of the issues in the business model of journalism and media and all of that, which is bigger than what we are trying to figure out as individuals ourselves. And that's something that is just happening in the world, and the soccer space is caught up in it. But because there's not legacy stuff, there is not as much to fall back on. Absolutely. And one of the things I've always said is, like, what I want to build is I want an MLS or NWSL fan to have, if they want to, the experience that an NFL fan has, which is like, I open up my phone today and Ian Rappaport's telling me where every NFL draft player is going to visit to have a meeting. And I can turn on a TV right now and watch about the NFL, and it's 19 months away and I don't care about it and it doesn't matter. But, and maybe the NFL is a bad example, but like that's an option that exists for fans, which hasn't existed for North American soccer fans, I think, in the past.
No, it hasn't. And at the same time, I also, I do look at the way that MLS is somewhat, I do think in a lot of ways, these are the good old days of covering MLS, because, I look at the way that Europe is and the way that coverage works throughout Europe, which is much, there's much less access, but there's also like less like, honestly, like, you look at English media, there's not a lot of like real journalism going on in English media covering the teams there. Like, there's not.
Yeah, because they're so far removed.
There's not a lot of beat coverage. There's not a lot of that kind. And it ends up getting more tabloidy, and there is this more of a sort of like confrontational relationship between the media and the teams that you don't necessarily see in American media. And for me, I like the way that American media covers sports a lot better. I think it tells more interesting stories. And I think there's something to be said about like creating the world that we want to live in. And, I used to say this a lot early on when I started covering the Sounders is, there was a lot of bemoaning how sports talk radio wasn't really covering the Sounders. And I took that two ways. One is, yeah, it would be nice if the Sounders were part of the mainstream conversation. But in the other way, I don't really love everything that sports talk radio brings to the table, right? And it does sort of like create this sort of like whoever is the loudest and whoever is the, has the most outrageous take gets the most attention. And I do kind of like that we haven't had to play that game so much at Sounder at Heart. And I think that's one of the things people like about us. Now, I suppose that also limits our ceiling. Like, we'll never be, so I don't know, but
listen, if you're not covering Pulisic cheating scandals, like what?
Yeah, that was
how big can you possibly be?
I will say that's been a real eye opener for me. I didn't know who this woman was that apparently was his girlfriend. I thought when she was talking about Rhea, I thought that was another person. Like, there was so much. Like, I gotta tell you, I've never felt older than when I looked at like the Instagram post there, and it's like I don't know any of this. I don't like. I was so lost. I thought I was reading like a different language. It was pretty funny.
Hey, at least you knew Instagram. At least you had the floor is high enough.
I did recognize that it was an Instagram post. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying, because I think we have both had the experience talking to players, talking to coaches where they're like, yeah, like I never did this before in my career. And obviously the locker room is its own debate, and one that I think should be open, which is I think people should have access, but shouldn't be in that space, and it should be organized so that players then have to talk in other spaces. And I've always said that, but the idea of it, the like psychology of what it all is having players and coaches be open to interacting with media, which is then the opportunity to interact with fans in their market. And it's not something in Europe. Like, it straight up is that interview in the hallway in front of the Carling Cup, logo, background, right, for 90 seconds, and then a post-game presser at a dais. And like, that is the interaction for many of these teams. And where for us, there's opportunities to do remote calls from home and, podcast appearances and social stuff, and to be at trainings and to interact with players. And I'll give it an easy example. The coverage of Paul Rothrock comes from the fact that you all get to be around him. Absolutely. And you know what he's like.
Right.
And that has been endearing to fans. It's been endearing that it's made him a bigger story maybe than he would have been, on top of the success. And of course, Brian Schmetzer calling him better than Messi or whatever happened there. And that's not possible in a lot of markets in other sports, but also in soccer around the world.
Well, and I think, talking to Paul, I think one of the things that I appreciate about him is that he recognizes that this is an opportunity for him to tell stories about himself. And he feels comfortable that, credit to him, he feels comfortable sharing these things with us. And I don't know that if he only saw us after he scored goals, like if that was the only time we saw him, was like when they happened to pull him out of the, to give us a post game 90 seconds, like you said, I really don't think he would feel comfortable talking to us about, what's going through his head and how he tells himself these narratives, and he kind of creates this whole story around himself, which I think is a really sort of vulnerable place to put himself in. But he's willing to do that because he understands there's something else going on here. And I love that about American soccer media, that it does still feel like you can make connections to players, that you can make connections to coaches. I just think about some of the ways that Brian Schmetzer interacts with the media. And I mean, frankly, I don't know that there's another soccer coach in the world who's doing that stuff, who's like giving.
The way he writes people's name down so he could repeat it back is like next level.
Right, exactly. Like that stuff that he's constantly, there are times where I almost feel like he almost acts too familiar with us, because I'm like, do you not realize that this is being broadcast to like the world? But I appreciate, at the same time, I appreciate that he doesn't seem to care, like that he's going to give Nico and I a hard time just because he knows we have a rapport. Like, do I think that he, loves us unconditionally? No, like he treats us like we're just sort of part of the whole ecosystem. And I don't think that's the case. One of the funniest things about Ted Lasso is the Trent Krim.
That
character is like, look, that character does not exist that's like an American archetype that they threw into England. Like, there's no way that the Trent Krims of England are interacting with the Ted Lassos of England in that way. Like that's a much more American interaction that they're having. And and yet that is sort of one of the things that we get to do with Brian Schmetzer a lot. And I think that Sounder at Heart does a good job of accessing that and playing into it and creating an ecosystem around the club that is different than what you're going to get anywhere else. And I think that, a lot of local soccer media is doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's great work being done across the U.S., across Canada. We obviously lucky enough in our season previews. And yes, I understand we did not hit every team. I have heard many times. I went through a lot of people. I don't want to. Now you're going to make me name the teams that's like my ultimate shame. I wake up at 3:15 in the morning.
You're like, we never talked to the Montreal,
I didn't do
the
it.
CF Montreal.
Nope, we did Montreal.
Oh, okay.
We did Montreal. My shames are Portland.
You never talked to Portland. That is good. That is gold right there.
My shames are San Jose, I think, is actually one of them.
All right.
But
that one's
a lot of that was like we were waiting on, I think Vancouver actually as well. We were waiting on signings to be made and games to happen and stuff like that. And we did not get back around to some of them. So I apologize for that. But over the last 2 years, we've talked to someone from every team, and these people are doing incredible work covering their teams. And so that's why we like to highlight it, and we like to tap into that knowledge. And the relationship that someone local has and knowledge and understanding is always going to be different than it is national. And I get that, right? I'm a Mets, Jets, and Knicks fan. And whenever someone finally talks about one of my teams because we're maybe good or we're so bad, I listen for 15 minutes. I'm like, well, you're an idiot. You don't know anything that's going on. You don't understand. It doesn't mean what it means to you. Like, Zach Lowe, stop talking about my team. So I get it for some people, and other people, I think our hope is that we can help be a better fan of the whole league, and not just knowing your opponents and all of that, but like one of the things at MLS that we always had was numbers went down into MLS Cup sometimes.
Right.
Because people cared about their teams, but they don't care about the league, which you're not intrinsically supposed to. But I would hope that if you enjoy watching Sporting Kansas City enough and they lose to San Jose, and San Jose goes and loses to Seattle, and Seattle goes and loses to LAFC, and then you want to watch the final because you want to watch the best, but you also are into the storylines and what it means for team building in the future and all of that. So we're trying to help people have that experience. And then, I think going forward, the dream would be that we also are helping other local sources pop up and other people get into the game, and other people have platforms to write and report and record and do whatever they want to do in the future. So this is just a first step, but it's one that we're really excited about. We've talked about it for a year plus, just back and forth on random conversations. And we were finally able to get something established to start from. And if people have ideas of what they want to see us do together, feel free to send them over. And but I'm really, really excited. Jeremiah, anything from you?
No, I'm just really, I think this is a great sign of things moving forward. I really hope that this continues to grow, and I'm looking forward to being able to do more work with you guys and to get ourselves out in front of people that we might not have otherwise gotten in front of.
Yeah. So we will continue to be doing some crossover stuff. You'll continue to see us on each other's feeds, on each other's socials and platforms and all that type of stuff. But I know you have to head on a nice little trip to Mexico. You're flipping with the team.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
As the Sounders come back to the US.
I'm going to leave. There's always got to be some Sounders presence in Mexico.
Some presence inside of Mexico. And fingers crossed that because we're pre-recording this, that CCL is going going okay in one direction or not. And maybe we'll all be back in Mexico for a final sometime soon. But yeah, this is a really exciting moment for us. So happy to be with you to launch it, and have a good trip.
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So, Sounders have another game this weekend. They're playing FC Dallas, who I think is a pretty good avatar for the Western Conference this year. This is a team who is 3-1-4. They've only lost one game. They have a +5 goal difference. They've scored 17 goals. They're averaging 1.63 points per game, and they are 7th best in the Western Conference.
Yeah. Insane. Yeah. Completely insane.
Yeah. The Western Conference right now is wild. There are currently 5 teams averaging more than 2 points per game. There are 4 teams who are on pace for 71 points or more. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the Eastern Conference is obviously more normal, but I mean, Nashville is going crazy over there. Just a lot of really good teams this year and some historically shitty teams this year.
Yes.
And then some mediocre ones or decent ones like Dallas.
There are, there are 7 teams with 1 win through 8 games. That is a lot. That's
pretty bad. Yeah.
But FC Dallas is looking like a pretty good team. I don't know if we know how good they are yet. They have only played 2 road games. That certainly helps their record. They're 1-1 on the road. So that's throwing some things off a little bit. And I guess maybe that's one of the things that's throwing things off in general is that the home road splits are all over the place, in part because there's a whole bunch of teams that are, like the Whitecaps, I think have only played 1 or 2 road games because they're going to go on a long road trip here in a minute. And then there's a whole bunch of teams that that are like that, where they haven't played a whole lot of home games. But here's Dallas. They're coming off of 2 ties. One of them was against St. Louis at home, so maybe that tells you something. But they tied a decent Galaxy team 2-2. They have in their one road win was a 4-0 win over DC United, who is very, very bad. But their only road loss was to LAFC, and it was a respectable 1-0 loss to LAFC. They've played a lot of kind of crazy games. They beat Toronto 3-2 to open the season. They had a 3-3 tie with San Diego. They had a 4-3 win over Houston. And then they had this 4-0 win over DC United. So it's a team who seems to have some gaps in the back, but can definitely score goals.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't watched them a ton this season, but they look like they will be a handful, I feel confident with the Sounders' ability to handle pretty much any opponent at home, but I don't think it's going to be an easy one in terms of the attack. Peter Musa is a very good player. I mean, fair to say.
I think I underestimated how good he would be. I'll raise my hand there.
He's been excellent. He's been a really, really good signing for them. So that's going to present a challenge, but I don't know, man. I mean, if we were going to Dallas, I would be very, very happy with the draw, but these are to be an elite team.
They have to win.
Yeah. You have to win games like this at home. And it maybe is not going to be as much of a walk in the park as, the 3.5, we'll call it, other home games they've played this year. But it's still a game they need to win. I mean, I don't think FC Dallas is better than D-Grace,
No.
going to be a slightly different game state, I think, for most of it. But I think if the Sounders can dominate a team like Tigres the way they did on Wednesday, that, they should expect to beat a team like FC Dallas. But, maybe they shouldn't expect to beat them 4-1, I guess.
Maybe not. Yeah. I would accept a 2-0 win.
Yeah, that works too.
Peter Musa definitely is the main focal point of this offense. He is, he's kind of the whole package. He can hold the ball up. He can run behind. He's good with his feet, good with his head, good in the box. He is a handful, and the Sounders will have to be very aware of him. But Logan Farrington, also a very good forward. He's someone who has given the Sounders trouble in the past, if I remember correctly. But he is, they basically run a 3-5-2 with both of those two guys up top. And they don't necessarily have a whole lot of playmakers, but they generate enough. They figure things out. I'm expecting the Sounders to have, their hands full with this one.
Yeah, interesting team in that they have 16 goals this year, and they have, I think, 5 goal scorers. So very, very top heavy in the attack. I mean, that's maybe not like crazy abnormal, but they definitely have their offensive focal points. I think it's fair to say. And it's, the Sounders only have 5, I guess, unique goal scorers as well.
But they have 10 goals.
But they have 10 goals. So,
right.
Yeah, I think if you can sufficiently keep Musa under wraps, and prevent him from dominating, you're probably going to be okay. But that's obviously easier said than done. But I think this is a game you have to be really disappointed if you don't get 3 points from it.
Yeah, I think at this point, every home game that they don't, Albert Rusnak made a comment in the post game where he basically said, you play well on the road, and that's great, but if you don't turn around and get maximum points at home, it doesn't really feel like you're not getting the most of it. Like you have to get max. You have to win these games. It's all fine and good to have a bunch of home games left, but if you're not playing elite soccer at home, you're not gonna, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna always be tough.
And the Sounders have definitely had in the recent past seasons where they were elite on the road. They did everything they needed to do to be Shield contenders on the road and weren't able to back it up at home. And that doesn't look to be the case this year. They look great at home so far, but they've played 2 league home games. So that doesn't tell you a whole lot.
Yep. Well, I don't know if I have much else to say on that front. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
We'll have another show over the weekend. On Friday to discuss anything that happens this week. As usual, we're kind of getting back into the swing of things here. I appreciate everyone sort of having patience with my absence. I don't do that very often, but this time of year, my kids are on spring break. So, this year we went to Mexico and got to enjoy that. So I appreciate everyone understanding, even if you didn't.
Yeah.
But Aaron, it is a pleasure to be back recording with you either way. And I think we're going to get out of here. On behalf of Lickit and Aaron, I am Jeremiah Shannon. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Full Pool Wines, of course, and say thank you to our subscribers, and let everyone know also that we are getting ready to release. I think we're getting very close to officially taking orders for the newest issue of 4, the Sounder at Heart magazine. It's going to be focused on the World Cup, so be on the lookout for that. And with all that said, this is Nos Audietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Remember, you'll never get alone.
job. Let's go Sounders.